in 3, 2, 1.
I'm Jerry Trippiano, and you're listening to the I Love Shanny Show. Oh, Shanny, are you home?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's I Love Shanny Show. I'm your host, Shanny, and thank you all out there for tuning in to this week's amazing episode. I have a very special guest with me. I am so excited for her to join me. She is not only a certified psychic medium, okay, she is also a writer, a retired Army Colonel registered nurse, okay, she served our amazing country for 30 years. Our audience is going wild. Slow down. She's a radio talk show host on 1490 WWPR in Tampa, Florida. She's also a grief educator, a reverend, and folks, I love it, a witch. Let's welcome Catherine Nadal. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Shanny.
I am so excited to have you on. I don't even know where to start with you because it's like you are so well-rounded and it seems like you're into everything. But I gotta say, like, I am so fascinated about the psychic medium. So I would like to start there and we'll just work our way down the list. And
sure.
If you could start from the beginning and tell us whatever you would like to tell us about it, of how you knew, and how you've developed, your amazing skill to be able to talk to the other side.
Yes, well, I talk about this in my first book, but I was, my father and I were very close, and he really enjoyed to go fishing and shooting. He was an NRA instructor, so everything he was involved in, I was involved in. And when I was about 9 years old, he said, we're going to advance from, doing regular fishing. I'm going to teach you how to go crabbing. Mm-hmm. So we went to this dock and he explained the whole thing to me. He's like, this is like a crab, it's a cage and we're going to drop it in the water. And when it hits the ground, the sides of the cage open up and, the crab goes in there and then we're going to pull it out of the water. He said, so we're going to drop it in. Don't touch the rope and I'll come back and we'll check on it. So he walked away and there was a bunch of little boys on the dock. So he's walking over, checking out what they were doing. And I heard very clearly in my head, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.
Oh, wow.
So I grabbed the rope and I started to pull on the rope and I see him turn around and my dad was like 6'2", was giving me this kind of marching back towards me. Mm-hmm. And I just started pulling it up faster because I kept hearing it. And when I yanked it out of the water, his face was completely in shock. But it was the biggest blue crab that day on the dock. And all these little boys came running over and they were like, oh my God, And I was like, okay. It wasn't just getting a crab. I was like, I'm going to listen to that. Whatever that was, that definitely is something I need to pay attention to. And it was literally that was the pivotal moment that I actually started to be very aware that it wasn't just me in life, that there was other things going on. And I started to have very vivid dreams. Not long after that, my dreams were very vivid that I felt, my dad and I were so friendly, that I said, Dad, look what I dreamt of and let me tell you about this. And he was very strict Roman Catholic and he said, oh no, we don't have dreams like that. We don't talk about having dreams like that, shutting it down. And there was one particular instance that I had a dream because there was a lady across the street that I used to take care of. And in real life, I would go over, even as, like a preteen, go over and make sure she took her medicine, make sure her husband had a cup of tea, all that. And I had a dream that she stood up out of the wheelchair and gave me a hug. Oh. And as I turned my head, my cat that I had as a very little girl came running up the driveway. So the next day I said to my dad, I said, Mrs. So-and-so, I think she went to heaven. And he said, well, what'd you say that for? And I said, well, she was standing out of the wheelchair. And he said, I told you we don't talk like that. And literally hours later, her daughter came to the door and said that during the night, she passed away and she was in an area hospital. And that's when he was like, okay, we're not kidding here. He's like, do not tell me anything else like this. This is, And I said, okay, that was it. So I made the agreement in my head that I was going to live with these dreams and I was, somehow going to continue to figure them out on my own, but not share them. And that was like the real kind of reality for me, that I felt like, I wasn't afraid of it, but he was, it was like a delineation of something that I didn't have before. I felt I could share everything, and now I realized it was something that wasn't shareable. So, and he was really a very strict Roman Catholic. He had been like a Knights of Columbus member, and it was really like the real deal. And it just kind of continued to grow as I got older. And as I got older, I realized that a lot of the circles that I was involved in really weren't entertaining these things. But my friends and some of my family would, kind of encourage certain things. Mm-hmm. So a little bit later on, in my late teens, my family, we would have Italian coffee. And even my friends, a couple of my friends from the Bronx, we would go to a Bronx cafe and they would order espresso. And I would just lean over and kind of look in their coffee cup. And I'm like, oh, look, I see this. And I think this is what that means. And, and you have this girlfriend, and they would be like, what? Oh, wow. And one of my friends from early college years, he was really fascinated when I started telling him about, this girl he liked and this other girl he liked. So he was like taking me around the Bronx to different cafes and saying, well, maybe it's the coffee. So we have to go to a different cafe and see what you see about her in this cup, So as he would take me around to these different cafes in the Bronx, the staff that worked there saw what we were doing. So they would come over and say, what is she doing? And then, they'd say, can she do my cup? And sometimes other people, patrons in the restaurant, were like, well, if I order a coffee, can you see in my cup? And we kind of did it a little bit jokingly, but many times he pulled me to the side and he said, whatever you're doing is real. He said, because what I think you're doing is outside of that cup. And he was really one of the first people that kind of solidified that, because I knew that some of the stuff that I was saying was beyond that cup, Right. And then I, did my thing. I said, I have to be like a real person. I have to like become a nurse, and I have to get an education. And, Uncle Sam said, the Army, Uncle Sam said, hey, we'll give you a bachelor's degree if you join the Army Reserve. So I ended up doing that, and I ended up getting very involved in my career. And a lot of people in those circles were not entertaining things like that. Mm-hmm. They were not entertaining coffee cup readings or dreams or, speaking with those that are passed on. And I just kind of kept it, under wrap because it just wasn't entertained. And I saw the reaction of someone I loved so much, Shanny, my dad. And he put up the wall. And I thought, if he, so close to me, could put that wall up, I can't afford to do that in my career,
Yeah.
So I ended up going over to Iraq after 9/11, which was a horrific experience here in the New York City area. I live right outside of New York City. I live in Westchester County, and I was here the day of 9/11. And shortly after 9/11, the Army Reserve, one of the first Army Reserve units that went over was the units that I was involved in. And I went to Iraq. And when I was in Iraq, my battle buddy, who's also now a retired colonel, Denise Khaleesi, she said to me, hey, if we get out of here, you better share this with the rest of the world. You have a talent. And I said, oh, come on. I don't want to shut people down. I don't want to shut people off. It was very dangerous when we were over there.
Yeah.
So basically I said, all right, well, I agree to it. If we get out of here, I agree to it. Or at least I agree to the intention of doing it. And I'm telling you, literally like a month or less than 2 months of being home, I had a woman contact me, Paula Caracappa, and she said, are you still doing those coffee cup readings? And I said, yeah, but not with the public, like my friends, my family. She says, well, I'm having this big psychic fair. And she said, bring your machine with you. And I said, oh, come on. I said, I'm going to be sitting there reading the book, And she said, bring the book and bring the coffee machine. She goes, but I'm going to prove you wrong. And I went to the psychic fair, and there was all these people sitting there with cards out, and they were doing their thing. And I was setting up my coffee, and I brought my own china cups and
wow.
It looked so pretty. And I thought,
I love it.
Someone might come and take a picture of me, but that's about the extent of it, And I looked up, and there was a couple of ladies there, and they were like, what is this about? So I started to tell them, and they were like, okay. So I said, I'll do it. If you don't like it, and they were all the same questions. Do I have to drink it? Do I have to finish it? A lot of people don't like that coffee. It's very bitter, and, it's just not for everyone. And they did their coffee. And I gave them their readings, and they were like, wow. And because they were hanging out with me and listening to my story, they saw that I started to form a line. And these ladies, I just, till this day, I think back, and that's like probably close to 20 years ago now, they stayed with me, and they were running back and forth and washing the sauces and the cups for me because I had a line, and I was getting backed up making these coffee cups, And it was the first time that I actually worked with the public doing that. But that's when I really realized that I was, like Tommy said many years before, that I was reading beyond the cup, that people were open to a mediumship reading, which is connecting with those that have passed on, their friends and their family. So not just giving them a psychic reading, but if they were open to it, that I could give them messages from their loved ones. And
so beautiful.
I really realized that a majority of the people wanted that. Yeah. It wasn't just the past, present, future. It wasn't just tell me about the boyfriend or tell me about the career. They really wanted to have the connection of the afterlife. And I have to say, from that point on, I said, well, I got to tell Dad, So, Dad said, well, I'm not entertaining this. And he said, is there anyone that can test you? And I said, yeah. I said, there's this place in England. And he said, we'll get tested. Because my dad worked for the Reader's Digest magazine, which was a very popular magazine forever.
Oh, yeah.
And they used to do a lot of articles on people. And they had done an article that he had been kind of very involved in. And it was an article on Harry Houdini. And my dad was really a fan of Harry Houdini. And I didn't know that. And during this conversation, he said to me, Harry Houdini made it part of his career to kind of stamp out charlatans and stamp out people that were fakes. He said even in his death, he had ordered his wife to go around and interview mediums and to find out if there really was proof of the afterlife. He had given her a secret word. And he said, you really need to be tested by them. So I went to the Arthur Findlay College in England, and I went there, and I got tested, and I was in their top class. There was only 9 students in the class.
Wow.
And I remember when I went to the list in their lobby, I went back to see they had paired me up with like a roommate. And this woman was a stewardess with Lufthansa Airlines. And she said, so where is your name on the list? And I said, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I said, it's my first time here. I said, but I must be in the Beyond Basic class. And she laughed. She says, where are you on the list? I go, there's only 9 students in my class. She said, come downstairs. She says, pick out, and I picked out my name on the list. And she says, look, my name's on that list too. And I was like, oh my God. I said, no, I had insulted her. She said, no, that's the top class. We're with Simone Key. And she's one of the top, tutors here in this college. And I said, oh, wow, and that's when it really, like, a light went off in my head. And I said, I hadn't even done anything with these people, but they had already seen through, everything that I filled out on the paperwork and the stuff that I had been doing, and I went there.
So cool.
And, I came back home and I said, hey, Dad, I was in the top class. And Shanny, he still wasn't satisfied. He said, who here in America can certify you? I said, America? I said, that's not good enough. He said, no, it's not. He says, they're British. He says, who in America? And then I found out from my friend Suzanne Northrup, who's a very famous medium in the New York City area. She said that she was part of a group called the Forever Family Foundation, and they were based out of Long Island, New York. And she said, they're really strict. They really deal with evidence. She said, if you really are communicating with those that are in the afterlife, and they feel that you're doing that, she said, you will be accepted. She said, but I'm warning you. She says, a lot of people try out and they never get it. And I said, fine. I said, I'm really doing this for my dad. I said, but, I'm kind of doing it for myself too, but it's really my dad's pushing this. So I applied. And it was a big kind of ordeal. You had to do a reading on the phone. And then back then, in 2013, when I was certified, they were doing reading. You could do a reading by Skype. So Zoom wasn't in existence yet. And you see somebody, their face on Skype, and you just connect and you say a bunch of stuff and they don't blink. They don't say yes or no. They don't do a head nod. They do nothing. And then they disappear, and 10 minutes later another face appears, and then you do the same thing. And you read about 5 or 6 people. And then the person comes out and says, this is the end of it. Thank you very much. But if you pass, you'll get a letter in the mail. And they wouldn't say, did you do good or not good? You just left hanging okay. So I'm like, all right. So the first phone call I made was to my dad. And I said, listen, Dad, I'm letting you know it was grueling. I said, I was a nervous wreck. I didn't know what to say, but all I could say is what I said. It's just how I do my work. I read a certain way, and I did me. And he said, well, you'll know soon enough. And 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, and it said I was certified.
Oh, that's so
and it
exciting.
was literally then that my dad said, okay, I believe you. And at that point, my book was already out. My first book was already out. And I wrote the book about the coffee cups and about doing the readings and my dad had read the book, but he still wasn't convinced. But when I got into the Forever Family Foundation, that in some way made him feel like, okay, people are actually validating this. And, it was really like an amazing experience because it was so personal since it started in the beginning with him and going crabbing that day and telling him my dreams. It kind of all was like a full circle, with my dad.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I've been with the Forever Family since 2013. They're a wonderful organization. The organization was started by Bob and Fran Ginsberg after they had the tragic passing of their daughter. And they actually went on a mission to find legitimate mediums because they really wanted to have evidential proof of the afterlife. And in their journey, they were finding, mediums that they felt were valid and then some that were not valid. And they said that they really wanted to create the mission of validating mediums so that there's a hub for people to be able to go to someone that's actually been tested and certified. And now over the years, more than 20 years, they've been, at it. They've incorporated a lot of people that do research. So there's, different researchers that we get involved in, and we work with people that are, grief counselors and educators, and they've actually invited me to go on another grief retreat. I did one over a year ago in California, but in January 2025, there's going to be a grief retreat in Fort Myers. And family members, go on a 3-day grief retreat, and they have the opportunity to be with a grief counselor, to be with mediums, to be with each other. Everyone's grief is different. The loss of a child, the loss of a parent, the loss of a spouse. Everyone is dealing with their loss in their own individual and unique way. And that weekend is not just a collaboration of everyone together. It's really an opportunity for people to learn, learn about their own grief, but also learn about other people's stories. And it's such a beautiful experience that people go on that retreat. They have several retreats during the year. And, sometimes there's a waiting list. So I recommend anybody go to the Forever Family Foundation website, and they can see if there's a grief retreat. They also have a list of, I think there may be only 28 certified mediums, but every medium is listed, with an attachment to their website, but also their location, where they're located in the country. And most of us do the readings by Zoom or telephone. So we have people that book readings all around the world. Wow. So it doesn't matter what time zone you're in or where you're located. You can still, get a chance to talk to any of us.
Wow.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I decided, because a lot of people that follow me on social media reached out to me, and they said, they really enjoyed my first book, but they wanted to know more about my life. Mm-hmm. Because, I did serve in the military. I did serve in a combat zone.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, but it's also, I served as a nurse. And, when people look at things as an art and a science, they say, there's a healing aspect to this, but also, how do you combine all these different aspects of your life?
Yeah.
And it's different, and I actually, I always, especially after working with the public, I would always, inform, superiors if I was going to be on a radio show or getting involved with book, things with my book and stuff like that. So nobody ever seemed to be bothered by it. It's kind of interesting because, it does set me apart than most people, but I also think that everybody is living their own life and is on their path. Mm-hmm. And I talk about this mostly in my first book, but my mother struggled very badly with alcohol. And I felt that maybe as an early young child, in those early years, I think being very aware of her struggle made me very aware of people. So I've actually done a lot of work with people that struggle with addiction, drugs and alcohol. A lot of times people are really not sure what happened on their path. And it's not just doing a reading for them, but it's having them understand their own life. Wow. Everyone's living their own experience. Mm-hmm. And so I've been very involved with the music business, as you know, and I have a lot of friends in the music business. My first book, I was, inspired by rock star, superstar, two twins that actually were involved in the music business and were dedicating their mission, on their road to recovery, was going around and visiting schools. Aww. And the two brothers, Mark and Chris, legally changed their name to Rockstar Superstar. And they were going around and educating the children. And unfortunately, a couple of years ago, Mark passed away. So, but I have on my website, and I tell this to people all the time, they created, as musicians, they created their friends to put together a really amazing video of the two of them. And they created this song called Serenity. And there's a lot of big bands and a lot of recognizable names that participated in their music. And I have that on my website as a constant dedication, to Chris and Mark and their journey to help people with drugs and alcohol addiction.
That is so beautiful. You are such a kind soul, Catherine. And I just I feel like everything happens for a reason. And, sometimes we have to see, it just seems like you have been very self-aware of yourself since you were young. And your books, I would like to talk about, since you mentioned your book, She Danced by the Light of the Moon. First of all, I love the title. It's just, it's a very relaxing title just in general, where I want to vibe the light zone, light an incense and a candle.
Oh my gosh, Shanny, I have such a funny story to tell you, because I was on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. And that, as you know, is a very famous show. Yeah. And when he, started talking to me during the radio show, he said, "How did you pick the title?" And then he started to sing, and I couldn't believe it. But one of his favorite movies is a Christmas movie. I'm going to see if you remember what it's about, but it had the famous actor, James in it. Oh my gosh, I'm like blanking out. It was, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh,
remember?
Of course I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so there's an actual song that's played in that by the actor. His name is James. And he basically, George started singing it.
Aww.
And he said that's his favorite song. So I told him, I said, George, I had a pillow. And the pillow actually said, and they danced by the light of the moon. So on my book cover, I actually changed it, and she danced by the light of the moon. But the pillow was a similar image to what's on the cover of my book. And it's basically like a witch dancing with the cats, coming up behind her. And I'm a huge cat person. But the guy that I'm friends with is Tony Squindo. And he actually is the artist for a lot of merchandise work and art cover work for Metallica, the band. So I reached out to Tony and I was like, Tony, this is what I'm thinking about. And he said, I could do it. And literally, he created the front and back cover for me. Wow. And the back cover is amazing. The back cover should really be a tattoo. It's a picture of what's supposed to be me. And it's like, literally, like when you speak or breathe, you know how there's like kind of like almost like mist coming out?
Yeah.
And it's everything that I have done. Coffee cup images there. The third eye is there.
Wow.
The girl holding the rifle is there. All of these symbols breathing out of her mouth. And that's on the back cover. And I was like, Tony, you're amazing. It's just really incredible. And I have a lot of friends in rock and roll that have been very supportive to me. My best friend is Rob Caggiano. He was in Anthrax and Volbeat. And he's one of my earlier influences. We would go 30 years ago. And I would say, oh, there's a psychic over here. Let's go check her out and whatever. And he's really into a lot of like, herbal remedies. And, so the two of us, the two of us really over the years have like really developed a real sense of, of this in our life, and mostly the intention part of life. If you do everything with the right intention, that's what's important, and that piece of it will follow you. So if people do things with the wrong intention, chances are that's going to follow you too. So it's kind of like the path we live by is intention,
Yes. I totally agree with that. Like, I have a philosophy that I said to myself when I was 19, and it just kind of came to my head, and it was like, Shanny, think with your heart and your eyes will see. And I have always tried to like think with my heart and obviously common sense. And yeah, I totally believe that as well. Your intent and intentions, like, and I've never felt alone, so I've always been so fascinated by psychic mediums because it's like, do you have to be in a zone where you're like channeling it or is it just like you can walk into a room and there's somebody's loved one that's passed and they're getting your attention like, hello, gorgeous. I've got something to say. How does that work and how are you able to shut that down?
Me. I'm very particular. I don't like ambush readings. That's what I've kind of coined it, where someone comes up to someone in the street and says, hey, I have your father here or your mother here.
Right.
That to me, I don't agree with that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as a number one, as a psychic medium, and number two, as a nurse, you really don't know where that person is mentally.
Right.
You don't know where they're sitting with themselves. You don't know what's actually happened in their life or maybe what happened that day to someone. So that to me is unwarranted. Mm-hmm. I would not do that ever. However, when someone invites me to do a paranormal investigation, that's why I'm there. So
nice.
I need to pick up on spirits or I need to tell people a message. And that has happened even fairly recently. I did a big investigation last year with the actor Chance Kelly. And he was in the movie American Sniper. And he had invited me with a good friend of mine, Dan Sturgis, and they asked me to go to undisclosed some undisclosed location, and it happened to be the Thomas Paine home. And you can watch that video on YouTube. And I really recommend people look at that video because I was walking into a kind of an older, historic home and picking up on things. Literally, you can hear something when we were standing on the property outside, and I'm giving them this information. But in the middle of doing all that stuff, the actor, Chance Kelly, his mom was coming through. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think I have something here for, someone in the living. And, I acknowledge him, and he's like, it's okay, because I always say, like, are you okay with this? And it's okay. He wasn't sure if he was a believer or not a believer. He just wasn't sure. We were there, and he says, okay. And I gave him all the information. And the final product, when he put that out on YouTube, is so fascinating because he slips in pictures of his mom. So you can actually see what she looked like and all the references. I kept saying, I see Laverne and Shirley, and there was a lot of this real 50s energy. Mm-hmm. And he talks about it. So that to me is literally, you could see me in action, but then you can see the feedback from the person that I was doing the reading for. I just did something recently here in the Bronx. Edgar Allan Poe's home is a cottage, and it's actually still in the Bronx.
Oh, wow.
So Dan Sturgis, who's a good friend of mine, he's a paranormal investigator. He's also done a lot of acting work. He's got a channel on the Travel Channel. It's called Paranormal Caught on Camera. Whenever he needs a medium, he says, Kath, come to this undisclosed location and meet me somewhere, and then we go off together and go to some other location. And so I went to Edgar Allan's place, and we walked around, and it didn't happen to be very active, but one of the participants was sitting next to me. And I said to her, are you open to information? And she says, what do you mean? I said, what if I had information for you? And she said, absolutely. She's a big fan of mediums. And I said, okay, well, I have information for you. And she was able to validate it. So, that's why I'm very, I have intention with it. I don't just spring things on people and stuff. But it's also interesting because we always joke around. I have a lot of friends that are hairdressers, and I said, so I said, it's crazy. Sometimes somebody says, well, I'm sitting next to you. We're all going for dinner, and somebody says, well, I'm sitting next to you, so do I get a reading? And I'm like, I'm sitting next to you, so do I get a haircut?
Right, yeah.
It's so funny, though, people just I always laugh. You got to find humor in this, because it is a way of life. I have to, and I always say to people, a lot of times people say, you're a bit much, what haven't you done or whatever, it's like, hey, I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for my life. It's like, this is kind of like what my life's like, getting involved and working in Salem. I worked in Salem for 8 or 9 Halloweens up there with Christian Day and Lori Bruno and all of them. And, working up there, I ended up, really realizing that a lot of my belief systems really are in line with the Wicca religion. Mm-hmm. So I had to say, even though I grew up as a Roman Catholic, over the years, that religion wasn't serving me, and mm-hmm. and I wasn't in agreement with their methodology. So it was a personal choice, and I said, well, I'm going to join the Wicca religion. And I had, told my dad, and my dad was somewhat in shock, but, what could he do at this point? He realized I was totally out of control already. But, the military recognizes the Wicca religion. And believe it or not, when you pass away, they will put on, and it's in the, the deed of cemeteries with the military, but you can get a headstone for being a member of the military, and you can get the headstone with the symbol of your religion on the headstone. And the Wicca religion has been added. Several years ago, they added that. So that was really a big effort done by a lot of people to ensure that everyone is included. Amen. And I think it's important. I think people need to all feel equal, and they all need to feel that they're, if we're all part of this, serving, then we all need to be included in all of the same. So
the audience is going wild right now. They are just, they love it. that is so true. Like feeling included, and respected for, whatever your beliefs are, I think that is very important, and that is so awesome. So, church in Salem, Massachusetts. Okay. Let's talk. So you are a Wiccans, Reverend. What is the Lord and Lady of the, I don't want to, is it?
Finnegan Church.
Yes. Tell me about that.
So basically Lori Bruno, who is an Italian strega. Strega means witch. And she's one of my very good friends. And she developed the church in the early 90s, around 1993. And she's been around for a very long time. I interviewed her on my radio show. If anyone wants to hear her actual interview, they could go to SoundCloud or my website. And she said that she wanted to put together a church for everyone, basically for people that are friends with Lori, but even not just friends of Lori, but people that believe basically in being Wiccan and having the right intention and working in the right way. There's a lot of different definitions of what people say they do. And, we don't believe in hurting mankind. We don't believe in, hurting animals or anything like that. There's no, worship in regards to any, anything like that. And I think that's one of our main things, is that we believe in, working with things that are of higher power. And, again, it's the intention. And one of the things about Lori, and we all lovingly call her Mama, is she's not just a high priestess, but she's an educator. And not just educating, but she's storytelling. She goes all the way back to her ancestry in Italy, and she goes all the way back to her friendship with Dr. Martello, who was a really mover and a shaker in the 1960s in New York City, who was really big in the witchcraft movement and starting covens in the early 1960s in New York City. And I have a very good friend with Lady Rhea, who's also, starting to be very active in the early 1970s in New York City with covens as well. So I interviewed her also recently, and that's on my website and SoundCloud. But these people really were on the scene going back, what we're talking about, like 50 years ago, and educating people on what witchcraft really is, educating people on what, how and what and where they want their life to look like. And a lot of it is really about understanding. And that's like, Lori Bruno and Dr. Martello is basically saying, everyone doesn't always know what they know, and people say it all the time, like, oh, are you going to put a spell on me? Are you going to put a hex on me? Are you a white witch, a black witch, or whatever? They don't really know what they don't know, They watch a movie, they read a book, and they come up with these ideas of what they think they know what they're talking about.
Hocus
and chances
pocus.
are they don't, right?
Right. Yeah, I just think about, like what, like the movie Hocus Pocus and like some of the songs, I put a spell on you, so it's very interesting,
Oh, yeah.
Of what the perception is of what, media and movies to what it actually really is, so it's so interesting. I just had to say that though. And I love the movie Hocus Pocus.
I know. And when we worked in Salem, that the soundtrack to Hocus Pocus is played all the time up there. Yeah.
I love it.
Recently up there, I think last year, the actors from Hocus Pocus came up to Salem and they had like a reunion or something. Yeah.
That is so cool. And,
yeah.
I think it's so important. Now whenever I'm in Salem, Massachusetts, I definitely at least want to go see, this amazing church. I've always had a fascination with Wiccans. I myself grew up in an Irish Catholic family. My great grandparents, or at least my great grandfather, was the Knights of Columbus. And I just, right. And I just always had different views, I like to see the magic of things. And, there was just certain things within, the Catholic Church. It's like, no. And it was so, I understood that, but I also, broke free and was like, I want to believe in all kinds of things. And I believe in, the other side and, people, I had surgery, 14 years ago and woke up in the middle of surgery and watched him bring the crash cart. And I could still see my hands. I was still in my mind breathing. And that at that point really like opened me up where it was no longer a wonder of if, it was a wonder of what was that, right? And it really kind of opened me up to, I think when you're closed off, especially to like the other side and you think that, nope, this in the church, it says you die and that's it and you go to heaven. And it's just, I think that there is another side, and it's something that I am so thankful that you share, especially in books, and you're so open and you're so interesting. And, now I'd like to talk about some of your other collaborations as well with other paranormal investigators.
Oh yeah. What you were just talking about though, you had a near-death experience. Is that correct?
Yes. And I sat up out of my body in surgery. And when I looked back, I seen my head there, and then I looked at my arms and I seen my fingers. I wiggled my fingers, and then I got scared when the doctor said crash cart, and I seen the crash cart coming, and it made me nervous. And I just remember I decided to lay back down in my body at that point instead of get up. And it was a very, when I woke up in the recovery room, I remember I said to the nurse, is everything okay? Because, I woke up in surgery and my blood pressure was dropping and you guys brought the crash cart. And then the nurse said, no, you didn't wake up. And she went and got somebody from the hospital and they came and took my account.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's interesting. You'll have to look at the Forever Family Foundation website because they get involved with a lot of research regarding anyone that's had near-death experiences. And I know that they even have conferences on that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I could probably connect you with some of the right people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
That's amazing, though. But the good part about that, Shanny, and I'm so glad that you shared that with the audience, is because you shared the story immediately. You told other people, but you also looked at the experience and said, how is this going to change me?
Yes.
Like you said, it's going to change me for the positive. I know that when it's time for me to go, that I will go. When it's time for me not to go, I know that I'm choosing to stay here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Other people could take that experience and really shut down by it and say like, I'm afraid to leave the house. I mean, there's all sorts of things that happen to people when they experience something like that. They could take that as a traumatic experience and say, like, I'm going to be fearful of everything for the rest of my life, where you took it as a positive and said, okay, I don't know how many days I have left or how many years I have left, but I'm going to make the best that I can with every one of them.
Yes, and I thought it was, I had no fear of it. What I really felt like it conquered was my fear of death. Because for so long, when I was like younger, and like my papa died, my best friend, basically, and all of these things that happened, I just was like, basically because of growing up in a Catholic family, that it was just over. It was like life to black, right? And then there's nothing. And in my heart, I always wanted to believe something different. And what it confirmed for me is that like my fear of death, of just it going to black and not having air, for some reason that like kind of freaked me out, and feeling like suffocation maybe. When I sat up out of my body, I still felt like I was breathing. And the fact I have tattoos, the other thing that blew my mind was I could see my tattoos. Even though my arms were sitting there, I was seeing 2 sets of tattoos. Yeah. And that just showed me like I come as I am and you go as you are. And, there was just beauty in it. So then since that point, I've lived kind of with no fear of, I'm not afraid of the other side. I'm not afraid of death because it still felt like I was breathing. I just was out of that vessel. and I don't know what was behind the doors, of the surgery room, but it felt like there was something on the other side that was waiting for me. If my papa would have walked through those doors, Catherine, I would have probably jumped up out of my body and ran to him. So whatever I felt like was on the other side of that door stayed behind that door, because even I felt that I was scared in the moment of the crash cart, but I felt like I wasn't ready. It wasn't my time. And so I don't know, but that moment though, honestly made me not afraid to live life. Right. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I need to just continue to go forward and, common sense, no fear, of course. Like, I'm not going to jump out of an airplane without a parachute and be like, I got this. No.
Yeah, well, it's true though. I talked about this in one of my books, but I did a hypnosis session, and it's the only time in my life that I ever really can give someone like a visual. But I had this experience where I did this hypnosis session, and in the session, I literally saw like blowing wheat, and it was beautiful. It was just like wheat blowing in the wind. And it looked beautiful, and it looked like I could touch it. And I guess I didn't really hear the person doing hypnosis, but I woke up literally pointing out at this waving wheat. Oh, wow. And the guy doing this hypnosis session seemed very stressed out. He was like sweating, and he said, are you all right or whatever? I said, are you all right? And he said, what did you see? And I explained to him, and I said, that was so beautiful that I didn't care what was behind me. I just wanted to go to this wheat, and like nothing mattered behind me. It was all in front of me. And it was that experience that I was able to help. Like, I had a family member, my cousin, that was dying of cancer, and he said, what do you think the other side looks like? And I said, well, to be honest, I have to tell you what I saw in my hypnosis session. I said, that wheat was so beautiful. I said, I just wanted to go there. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's almost like, say today is Monday, and you're in Monday. You were so worried the day before about something, but today is Monday, and that problem is now gone and past. Right. And you're not worried the way you were on Sunday. I said, it's like that. I said, whatever was the day before, whatever was the body before that you were in, no longer mattered. Right. You're on to the next thing, kind of a thing. Yes. But you're still aware of everything that you've left behind. Because when I do readings with people, Shanny, it's incredible. The best part as a medium is for me to be able to bring through information that's currently happening. Mm-hmm. When I say, oh, wow, there's a baby coming, and they're like, how does she know that? Like, she's been gone like 2 years. I'm like, no, the last day they physically lived is not the last day they physically saw. They continue to kind of track what's going on, mm-hmm. And it's interesting too when I do a reading, and sometimes in the reading they say somebody passed recently, and they're acknowledging another family member that just passed. So they're aware that there's a togetherness there, energetically together.
Yes.
So, wow, it's really amazing. I love your story, though, and I really think that, I'm going to connect you with the right people, because that story, and it's also similar to what families go through in grief, is when they tell their story to other people. Every story is a storytelling experience, mm-hmm. and there's a healing in doing that.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you. And I, knew how important it was. And I'll just say this quickly. At the time that in recovery, I wanted to tell the nurse right away, because I felt like it was, and the nurse was like, because I had said what my blood pressure was, all kinds of things. And the person from the hospital, it's like, I just wondered how many other people reported the same thing. And this was a major hospital in Seattle, Harborview Medical Center. And, so the staff there is big. And, it was just, like the person wouldn't tell me, but I just thought, well, I don't think they'd send somebody to document this if it wasn't something that was being studied, of what actually mm-hmm. happens. So I am so thankful. I haven't shared that story in like 10 years, because you just don't want to make people feel, nobody likes to think about death. And me, I'm like, I'm fine with it. Don't worry. I'm fine. I'm just not getting any more tattoos. And I got to tell you, Catherine, after that experience, I stopped getting tattoos. Because when I seen double tattoos,
the correlation? What is the correlation for you?
Because I think when I seen the double, like when I seen my arms there, like laying there lifeless, and then when I was wiggling my fingers and I could see my tattoos, for some reason at that point, I was like, I think I have enough and I'm comfortable to go with what I have and, to the other side. I'm not sure what it was. But at that point, I never got another tattoo again. I've just kept the ones I've had maintenanced, and that's it. I still don't know the answers to that. I'm like, weird.
Yeah, it's symbolically though. Like my first book talks about signs and symbols, and it's symbolically, to me, it feels so important that is what caught your attention, because people get tattoos. I mean, even when I joined the military, they wanted to know what my tattoo looked like. And, it's what identifies someone.
Right.
And tattoos are very identifiable, and I always find it so amazing when, a lot of my friends in the music business, they're like, oh, I was on tour and this guy showed me a tattoo of my face on his arm or his leg or whatever. I always laugh, where they get pictures of my friends, in tattoos on their bodies and stuff. But it's a huge compliment,
Oh, totally.
But it's also very identifiable. It's what they identify with. So if they're getting a tattoo of the favorite musician or a tattoo of their favorite band logo or whatever it is, it identifies something in their life. So I would almost tend to ask you to remember what the tattoo was that you said you were moving your fingers. Were you literally looking at one of your tattoos, or do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it was multiple.
Okay.
And it's stars and hearts, and I have a tie-dye shooting star on my wrist, and then it follows like a constellation of other stars with hearts that are going along. And then the other arm, on my left arm, was flowers. And it's just like a bunch of different flowers mixed together. But for some reason, I focused on, I remember it was my right arm and the stars constellation. And like the star on my wrist is a tie-dye shooting star. So it's very like bright colors. And it was that I just, like when I seen double of, I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I realized at that point I'm going to the other side with everything, every scar I have on my body, every mark, every tattoo, everything that's me is going with me, even though my vessel, it still blows my mind a little bit to think about it. I mean, I don't know.
But it's the part of it that to me, that whole thing, to me, is that there's a theme of stars, but also that there's a shooting star, because people often miss a shooting star. They say, oh, look, there's a shooting star, and everyone else in the crowd looks up and it's already gone.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? So
yeah.
It's like a flash bang, it's like if you happen to be the one looking up, you see it, and that's similar to your experience with this near-death experience. Is it went quick, it was like, wow, I just saw a shooting star, but nobody else may have seen it. Do you see what I mean? It's only yours. So to me, there's a big symbolism there for you to say, okay, I'm going to live amongst the stars for the rest of my days, but I saw the shooting star. I had the near-death experience, so I'm going to remember that.
I just got the chills right now. Like,
isn't
literally.
That amazing?
Yes.
That's why I love when people, Shanny, so many people call me and they send me text messages like, I had this really weird dream last night. Tell me right away. What does it mean? I'm like, what do you mean? What does it mean? Like, I need details here. Tell me, was it in color? What were you doing? Were you, and it's amazing because everything the person tells me about the dream that they're worried about, I don't worry about. It's the one thing they didn't think was a big deal. It's always the thing that they overlook.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can totally see that. Now okay. So can we talk about your radio show? Bringing the darkness to light.
Yes,
I love that. You have your own radio show. Of course you do.
Wait till you hear this story. This is like pretty amazing. In November, I went out to see my friends. They were playing in Aldo Novo. and it was in Vegas, and I went out there, and I came back, and it was probably around late November, and I had a dream. And the woman by the name of Dr. Lori Nadal, Nadel, not related, Nadel, very similar but not related, she wrote the foreword to my book. And she's a very well-known journalist. She used to work with Dan Rather from CBS.
Ooh.
And, she wrote several books. I don't know, I think she wrote 7 books. And she and I are good friends, and she wrote the foreword to my book, and she danced by the light of the moon. And she was in the dream, and she was standing in Florida. She lives in Florida, and there was all these big palm trees behind her. And I said to her, give me the information for the radio show. And she said, you already have it. And I said, give me the information for the radio show. And she said, you already have it. And all I could see was these big palm trees behind her. And I said, what is that? So I woke up, and I thought, well, maybe she's going to get me connected with George Norrie again, or maybe one of her other friends, and I'll get back on the radio. The rest of the day, it just didn't fit. And I'm like, something's not right with that dream. So I went to the computer and I said, how do you get a radio show? And I just put it in. And this radio show popped up, and it said 1490 WWPR. And I hit contact, and I wrote, I live in New York. How do I get a radio show? And several hours went by, and it was around, I don't know, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was supposed to be going downtown with my friend Rob Caggiano. We were going to see Joan Osborne that night, and I never know where he is. My phone was flipped over, so the phone's ringing. I pick it up. I go, where are you? And this person goes, 1490 WWPR. I went, oh my God, that's Rob, So I start telling this person, listen, I had this dream. I'm supposed to have this radio show. And they were like, what? And I said, yeah, this is who I am. This is, so everything I said, they Googled my website, that I was in the military. The whole conversation, they were Googling me all along. And at the end, the guy said, okay, you want a show? And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I don't know what I would call it. And the guy named the show for me. He said, well, from what you're telling me, he said, you have a lot of friends in the music business. You have a lot of friends in your psychic world. You want to interview them. You want to promote their businesses. You want to promote their books. You want to promote their concerts and their tours. Maybe people are in the dark. They don't know about what's going on with these people. So bringing the darkness to the light. And I was like, wow. I'm like, are you kidding me? And he was like, no. And I was like, let's do it. And a lot of gracious people. One of my very good friends, Michael Cirilli, he's an Emmy award-winning editor, spent many years in the music business, still in the music business. He kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me how to get a recording device. I started with the Rodecaster, and now I'm on a Mackie DLZ. And, he's teaching me about editing and stuff. And a lot of my friends have just pitched in and said, hey, I have a friend that you can interview. One of my very good friends for like 15 years, David Reese, who was from Bingler Choir and Accept, and he's got his own stuff going on. He's like, hey, Kat, he interviewed with me many years ago, and he said, let's do it again. He sent me a bunch of guys my way. A lot of my friends have been very gracious, and even the people in my psychic world, my Salem world, very gracious people. But also, I've been very gracious with them because I have a huge social media platform, and I'm promoting, them to the max. And I just love all of them. And I think everyone has a story to tell. So when you turn on, the album, or you open their book, you know more about them than maybe, than you thought you did. And that's what the purpose of this radio show is to find out who these people really are, and find out what makes them tick, and find out, what they want to do in the future.
I love it. I love it. And I have to say too, your website is amazing. And you're also a company owner on top of everything else. Yay. And Dream Central Station LLC. Okay. So, I think so. Okay. Tell me how that works. So if someone's got a dream No,
so basically Dream Central Station is just my psychic business. It's everything related to my psychic business.
Love
So
it.
if people want me to work as a psychic, if they want a medium service, my books fall under there. I do a lot of motorcycle charity work. I do a lot of veteran charity work. There's a very close family friend of mine named Sergeant Eddie Ryan. When we were in Iraq in 2005, he got shot twice in the head he was a Marine Scout sniper. He was on a rooftop. He got hit by friendly fire, and he's been paralyzed ever since. So I have a special reading on my website, which is a 15-minute reading for $40, and 100% of that goes to Sergeant Eddie Ryan. And that helps with his care. That helps with the caretaking and all the services that Eddie needs. And, Dream Central Station is kind of the same concept of, my dad worked at the Reader's Digest, in the beginning of our conversation. And I used to, go to work with him, and he was in Grand Central Station, the famous Grand Central Station in New York City. And his offices were in the top on the Pan Am building, which is now the MetLife building. And he used to walk me through that lobby area. They call it a concourse. And when you look up, which if you come to New York, you need to come, because the ceiling of that is a constellation. And I talk about it in my first book. Yeah. And when they actually did it, they did it in reverse. So when you look up, you think it's going to look one way and it looks another way. And, so I took the Grand Central Station concept for Dream Central Station, because people take a train to go to New York City and then take another bus or a car or whatever to go somewhere else. So they come to me to either get a reading or get a book or get grief counseling or whatever they need. So they can go to somewhere else. Yeah.
Genius. That's all I have to say is mini genius right there. Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. So, how can the listeners find you on all of your platforms? Obviously your amazing website. I want to plug your books again here. And then what are your cat names? I'd like to have a shout out for your cats.
Thank you. So to start off, I have two cats.
Okay.
I have one that is from a breeder, and she's a Minuet, which is, they often call them Napoleon cats, but they're a crossbreed between, Persian and, I guess they have short legs, so that's what makes them Minuet. Yeah, so she's Nicolette. I named her after my godson because he wants to go on to be a veterinarian. Aww. He's graduating this coming weekend.
Congratulations.
So, yeah, thank you. And his name is Nicholas, so she's Nicolette. Aww. And the second one I got from Rock and Rescue, which is a wonderful rescue place in South Salem, New York. And I got her around Christmas time, and they said her name is Frosty. And I said, no, I have to change that, and I made her Juniper. Oh. So her name is Juniper, and she's beautiful too. I love my cats, and I treat them very well. They go to the cat hotel for their haircuts. Oh. I'm a little over the top. But a lot of people know that about me with my cats. But I have an Instagram account, and my Instagram name is CatWitchNYC. It's CatWitchNYC. My website is www.dreamcentralstation.com. I have a private Facebook account, which is my name, Catherine Nadal, Nadal. And I have a business Facebook page, which is Dream Central Station. But I would have to say 99% of my stuff is really done on Instagram. That's the best place, to contact me. And my email is Madrid, MADRID, the number 1 day, DAY, @yahoo.com. And my cell number is 914-882-4635. And that's all listed on my website as well.
Well, I gotta say that this hour has went by so fast. You're so amazing that I still have like 2 pages of notes and stuff. You'll have to come back on we'll have to visit in the future. I am so thankful and so happy that, my listeners and myself have gotten to know you. You are absolutely amazing. I will be tuning in to not only your website monthly to see what's going on, but out your show as well. And to my listeners out there in listener land, like, follow, share. Catherine is absolutely amazing. And to the live studio audience that's going wild for you, today you are going home with $20 Hallmark gift cards. Folks, it's the gift that keeps on giving with your words. Oh, they're going wild. Yes, absolutely love it.
That's so great. Yeah, well, we'll definitely stay in touch, and I'll connect you with the near-death experience researchers.
Yes, I'm so excited for that. And folks, we are uploaded onto all major platforms. So this show, and of course, you can go to my amazing website, www.iloveshannyshow.com, listen commercial free, and click below my amazing flyer for Catherine Nadal. And it's going to link you to all of her social media and her website. So anything that she's mentioned today, it'll just be a click away for you to go and support this amazing lady. And I gotta say, I am going to have to pay for some of your services in the future, because I have recently lost my dad and my uncle. And it's so nice to be able to go to somebody that's gone through as much as you've gone through, to be able to say, hey, I'm certified. I'm the real thing. I'm not, somebody that's just wanting to, scam somebody or take somebody's money. Like, you are the legit real thing. And thank you so much again for serving our country. 30 years of service. The audience is going wild for you. I am going wild for you. And I know that the listeners out in listener land are also standing up and going, wow, she's amazing. And folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of your support. And until next week, everyone, I'll see you all soon. Bye, everyone. It's time for Shanny's final thought. Thank you, and welcome to Shanny's final thought. Wow, Catherine Nadal. I gotta say, certified psychic medium, 30 years serving our amazing country, retired as a Army colonel, registered nurse, radio show host to 1490 WWPR out of Tampa, and that's AM, folks. I just got to say, I'm a huge fan of Catherine Nadal. And for those of you out there that maybe want to get a reading or get to know her a little bit more, you can always go to her website, dreamcentralstation.com. I love the fact that she is a cat mom. She is so cool. And folks, don't forget to check out her books, Seeing More Than Clouds in Your Coffee, and She Danced by the Light of the Moon. And I know that you can get these books on Amazon and other places. So please follow, and support this amazing woman. And until next week, everyone, see you all soon. Bye.